We're about to go on one of the most fascinating, beautiful, and scenically gorgeous trips this show has ever been on. Where are we? We're at Abalone Cove. So come with me and experience some absolutely wonderful magic of nature. Okay, we're standing talking to Holly Starr, and Holly is the
Recreation Services Manager for the City of Rancho Palos Verdes.
I'm Diana McIntyre. I'm the docent coordinator and curator for the City of Rancho Palos Verdes.
I never thought we'd be standing in a parking lot, but this is a very special parking lot because...
Well, this is the parking lot to the Abalone Cove Tidepools and open space area behind us. So it's part of one of the reserves in the city of Rancho Palos Verdes. It's open to the public and it has some really unique treasures, which I hope we get to see a little bit later.
So that means then you can come and park your car, and it's a huge parking lot. Do you know how many cars this holds?
I have approximately 120 cars.
And I see over here a whole lot of picnic tables, so I'm assuming that you can come here, park your car, go to the tide pools, and also have a big picnic.
Absolutely, and the tide pools, because the tide comes in and out in different seasons, you can always come here and enjoy the view, watch for dolphins, and watch the little critters running around.
How do we know when is a good time of the year? You mentioned the tide pools, but how do we know when is a good time to come?
Amazingly enough, winter seems to be the time when most of the rains and stuff come. You can always call the center and ask, or look in the local paper. They have the tides in and out. Tides, low tide, high tides happen all the time. The lowest ones seem to be in the winter. They have some really low ones during the summertime, but they're at like 3 in the morning, so it doesn't quite work. You need the daylight hours, and again, those seem to be in the fall and winter.
And before we go down to the tide pools, you said a number. What number can people call?
That number would be 310-377-1222. Again, that's 310-377-1222. And that's here at Abalone Cove, and the staff is more than happy to give you the low tides.
So, away to the pools. Okay, we're actually down at the tide pools. Perhaps you could point out for our viewers where the parking lot is and how they get down here.
Well, actually, our gatehouse where they park has little maps, but the trails are pretty well marked. You can always keep track of where the tide pools are. And the parking lot's just above us and probably just a 10-12 minute walk.
Okay, and they walk actually down.
They walk down. There's actually a really wide driveway they can walk down if they take the street and come down the road, or they can take the little foot trail, which is what I like to do most of the time, and it leads them through a little canyon and then down along the cobblestone shore to get to the tide pools.
We're standing what looks like, well, I don't know, what is that down there?
That's a closed sea anemone. It's an animal. It usually opens and you see it, it looks like a flower. But when it's going to be exposed to the sun and without the water, it closes up, and lots of times it uses little pieces of shell to help shelter itself, and it holds its moisture inside until the tides return.
I think one of the interesting things is, it seems to me that if you stand here and look at something, the longer you look, the more you see stuff.
Exactly. A lot of these things, even as you walk by a tide pool, your shadow will cause a lot of these animals to just freeze. They know you're there, and if you stand there for a while, then you look like something permanent there to them, and then they will start moving again.
Does the environment have anything to do with this? I mean, is it cold, hot? How does that all affect them?
They have to be able to stand cold and heat, because right now, these are sitting out in the sun, and then other times it could be in the cold rain with fresh water, and they can be in the cold sea. So they have to be able to stand all those environments.
But what about some of the other creatures? And is that the word, creatures?
They are all creatures, although we do have plants out here too. But most of the things you'll be looking at are animals. They're in what we call invertebrates, animals that don't have backbones.
No backbones?
No backbones.
A lot of tide pools have a rocky coastline and are made of basalt, but we actually have ledgers, almost like pages coming up out of the ground, which make these tide pools in Rancho Palos Verdes very unique.
Tell me again about, and because it seems so deserted down here now, is there again a good time, a bad time to come down here?
Well, For me, any time is a great time just because you're so close to the ocean. But a lot of times this whole area will be underwater and you will not be able to see any of the creatures. We're here today at one of the lower tides, so you can literally walk all the way out. And the further out we go, the more likely you are to see octopi and sea stars and other interesting characters. A lot of times all of the area in this area is underwater.
That's very interesting when you said it's all usually covered. Covered about how deep?
Well, I shouldn't say all. There's little points that come up, and the reason we're here as the tide is going out is because we've had people who come in as the tide is coming in and literally get cut off. It becomes almost like a little island, and they have to cross the waves that come in pretty fiercely in a short period of time. So it's always good to check that tide calendar and then come out as the tide is going out to explore the tide pools.
Okay.
And as she mentioned about the waves coming in, that's another element that these animals all have to handle. They have to be able to hang on when the waves come crashing in through here.
I think that's an amazing thing about nature. You know, you say they have to handle it. You wonder how do they know? I mean, it's just probably a natural instinct.
I think it is, and those that couldn't handle it aren't here anymore. They bring a lot of students down here to teach them. Years ago, people used to collect things, but we're an ecological preserve and we don't allow collecting here now. But you can observe.
So what are we looking at now?
I believe it's an ochre sea star. Has 5 points. We used to call them starfish, but they're not fish, so we say sea star now. They're fairly common here in the tide pools, and they come in several different colors, kind of orangish, red.
And now another thing we're looking at is the
hermit crab. And this is a little crab that has sort of a soft backside, so he borrows other shells for houses.
Is there any sort of federal or government thing in terms of protection down here?
Oh, absolutely. This is both the state and federal reserve, and no taking of the seashells, no taking of the animals. And the reason that is because, as you saw earlier with the sea anemone, they use the leftover shells to protect themselves. Everything here is vital for the overall health of the tide pools.
I see on the right-hand side, in my poor nautical or maritime knowledge, what I perceive to be a clamshell. Are there clams down here?
Yes, there are clams down here, and there is a clamshell there. If we're able to catch it, you'll see squirts coming up from out of the rocks, and those are clams squirting out what they've digested.
So they eat and then squirt it out?
Yes, they do. They have 2 funnels up there, an intake and an outtake. And they take the food that's in the water, goes in, they digest it, and then when they're finished with it, it squirts out the other one.
Clams, if I recall, are also, isn't that a delicacy?
Oh, they're excellent to eat. Years ago, before all the laws went in here, we used to come down here and go clamming.
I'm sure some people watching might wonder, can I bring my dog down here?
Yes, and unfortunately, though we allow them in most other areas on leash in our park grounds, this area is prohibited to dogs.
The reason being?
There's a lot of little critters, and dogs, though very friendly to people, are rather destructive by the water.
I think of all the shows that I've done for RPV TV, this has probably been one of the most exciting and certainly visually most interesting. So I hope that when you come to Palos Verdes, you come down here to the tide pools. It is truly an absolutely mind-boggling, mesmerizing sight. Until next time, thanks for watching. I'm John Clayton in the tide pools. Well, maybe not in the tide pools, but by the tide pools. Take care.